Hi everyone, welcome to part 4 endocrine system. We will learn about the summary. Hi everyone, welcome to part 4 endocrine system. We will have summary for this endocrine system, especially for the endocrine glands, the hormones, the target cells, axons, and disorders. So I will put all the glands, the hormone, the target, the axon, and also disorders in a table, so we can go continuously from one endocrine gland to another endocrine gland. Again, make sure that you do understand there is a logical connections between the glands, the hormones, the targets, and the axons of the hormones on its target cells, and also what happens if the hormone is produced too much, hypersecretion, or too few, hyposecretions. There will be a consequence of these disorders. Okay, so we start with the first gland, which is the hypothalamus. Just remember, this hypothalamus is actually part of the brain, and this is part of the nervous system. So hypothalamus is part of the brain that control the endocrine glands, the endocrine system. And hypothalamus produce hormones that stimulates the production of hormone from other endocrine glands, especially pituitary glands, and also produce the inhibiting hormone. So there are two types of hormones produced by the hypothalamus: releasing hormones and inhibiting hormone. There are 9 hormones produced by hypothalamus. The first one is called the growth hormone releasing hormones. And the name is telling you these hormones stimulate production of growth hormone. The growth hormone is produced by the anterior pituitary gland. Therefore, the target for these growth hormone releasing hormones will be the anterior pituitary gland. And the actions will be stimulate the growth hormone production from the anterior pituitary gland. The second hormone produced by the hypothalamus is called the growth hormone inhibiting hormones. And from the name is telling you this one will inhibit the growth hormone. And because the growth hormone produced by the anterior pituitary gland, then the target will be anterior pituitary gland. And the action will be inhibit, okay, inhibit the production of growth hormone. The third one is called the thyroid releasing hormones, right? And this is a releasing hormones. It's gonna be stimulate production of TSH, and the TSH is produced by the anterior pituitary gland. Okay, so therefore the target for this thyroid releasing hormone will be anterior pituitary gland. The next one is called the gonadotropin or gonadotropic releasing hormones. And the name is telling you this is increase or stimulate production of 2 hormones, FSH and LH, follicle stimulating hormone and luteinizing hormone. Both of these hormones is produced by the anterior pituitary gland. Therefore, the target for the gonadotropin releasing hormone will be the anterior pituitary gland. The next one is called the corticotropic releasing hormones. So this one will be stimulate the ACTH, Adrenocorticotropic hormones, and melanocyte stimulating hormones. Both of these hormones are produced by the anterior pituitary gland. Therefore, the target for this corticotropic releasing hormone will be anterior pituitary gland. The next one is prolactin releasing hormone or releasing factor. So this is releasing, and the action will be stimulate of prolactin production, and prolactin is produced by the anterior pituitary gland. Therefore, the target for this prolactin releasing factor or prolactin releasing hormone will be the anterior pituitary gland. PIH, the name is telling you this is prolactin inhibiting hormone. Therefore, the action will be inhibit prolactin and also melatonin or melanocyte stimulating hormone. Both of these hormones are produced by the anterior pituitary gland. So this anterior pituitary gland will be the target for this PIH. The next one is oxytocin. So this is just regular hormone. It is not releasing, it is not inhibiting hormones. So this oxytocin produced by the hypothalamus, it will go to the posterior pituitary gland. It will be stored in this posterior pituitary gland, and then after that released from this. So there is not really action over here, just a storage for the oxytocin. So the gland that really produces oxytocin is actually hypothalamus. Posterior pituitary gland is used for storage. And then the last one is called the antidiuretic hormone or vasopressin. That's another name for the ADH. And similar to the oxytocin, these hormones will be stored in the posterior pituitary gland. So this posterior pituitary gland is considered as the target for both oxytocin and the ADH. While the anterior pituitary gland is become the target of these 7 hormones produced by the hypothalamus. Okay, now the next one is going to be the pituitary gland. Okay, and remember, pituitary gland has 2 portions. The anterior part is called the anterior pituitary gland. This anterior part produces 7 hormones. So we'll list all these 7 hormones over here. The first one is called the growth hormone. Okay, and the target, just remember growth. When we are growing, we actually growing our bone is become taller. Then we become, the bones become longer. We are becoming taller. Muscle, the muscle become bigger. And liver is the place for energy storage, which is the glucose. So there are a lot of glycogen in this liver. So these are the 3 targets for growth hormone. Now, what the action? The growth hormone in the bone cell will stimulate the cell division. So there will be more additions of cells in the bone. So the bones become longer. It is growth. And then in the muscle, remember muscle is not growing by adding more muscle cell, because muscle cell number in each person are actually the same. There is no additional cell production. But what happens? The growth hormone in the muscle cell will make more proteins, especially the proteins in the muscle, and it will make the muscle become bigger. This is how the muscle growing. It is not because additional muscle cell, but it is additional proteins in the muscle that will make muscle cell become bigger. And then in the liver, the growth hormones will stimulate the glycogen breakdown. So remember, glycogen is actually a storage for glucoses. Okay, so this is storage of glucoses. And glucoses are needed for the process of growing. Therefore, this glycogen will be broken down into many glucoses, and it will be used for cell elongations in the bone, and also increase the cell size in the muscle. Now, what happens if we produce too much growth hormone? So this is hypersecretion. If it is in children, it will cause the children become very, very tall, become giant. Therefore, it's called the gigantism or gigantism. This is the disorder for hypersecretion of growth hormone in children. For adults, remember, adult will stop growing taller, but the muscle and the bones can be thicker. Therefore, an adult that produces too much growth hormone will have thicker muscle and thicker bone, and this disorder is known as acromegaly. We actually can see that on their face, on their hand. So their hand is really, really thick, and their cheek bone is thicker than normal person. And then what happens if the growth hormone is produced very little? This is hyposecretions over here. Then if it is children, it will cause dwarfism, right? So pituitary dwarfism. So the individual, the child become shorter than normal children. The next one, the next hormone produced by the anterior pituitary gland is called the TSH, Thyroid Stimulating Hormone. And from the name, then we should be able to guess what is the target going to be. The target is going to be the thyroid gland. Okay. And then what is the function, the action of the TSH? It will stimulate the thyroid hormone production, okay, the T3 and T4 production from the thyroid gland. The next hormone produced by the anterior pituitary gland is called the FSH, Follicle Stimulating Hormone, and this is related to reproduction. Therefore, the target will be ovary for female and testicle for male. Now, what happened? What is the action of FSH in the ovary? It will stimulate follicle cell maturation and also production of estrogen. So increase estrogen production. On male, on the testicle, this FSH will stimulate sperm production. The next hormones will be LH, Luteinizing Hormone, and this is also reproductive hormones. The target will be ovaries for female and testicle for males. On ovary, the LH will stimulate ovulation, the release of egg from the ovary into the uterine tube, and also production of other hormones produced by the ovary, like progesterone. Okay. And then for the males, okay, the testicle, the LH will stimulate production of testosterone. The next hormones, number 5, is ACTH, Adrenocorticotropic hormones. And again, from the name, we can guess the target going to be the adrenal gland, especially the cortex area. Okay, so adrenal cortex. What's the function? It stimulates androgens and cortisol production from this adrenal cortex. Number 6, PRL, the prolactin. And the name is telling you it is about lactation or milk. Then the target will be the mammary gland. What is the function? Stimulate production of milk. And the last one, melanocyte stimulating hormones. And again, from the name, we should be able to guess the target, because melanocyte, this is the cell that produces the skin pigment. So the cell will be located in the skin. So therefore, the target will be the skin. What is the function? Mostly for increasing the melanin production. So this is skin pigmentation. So these are the 7 hormones produced by anterior pituitary glands, the target for each hormone, the action, and what happens if there is a hypo or hypersecretion of this hormone. Okay, we go to the next one, still pituitary gland, but in this time we have the posterior part, okay, posterior pituitary gland. Remember, this posterior pituitary gland do not produce any hormone. They just receive 2 hormones, oxytocin and ADH, from the hypothalamus. So these 2 hormones are produced by the hypothalamus. It is stored over here, and then after that it will be released. Where they go? Okay, what are the targets? The OT is really needed during labor, during childbirth. It is needed to increase contraction of uterine. So therefore, the target will be the uterus, uterine wall. The OT is also needed for ejecting the milk. So milk ejection. And where the milk is produced, it is in the mammary gland. Therefore, the target for this OT is also the mammary gland. So there are 2 targets for OT, uterine wall during childbirth and mammary gland during breastfeeding or lactation. There is a several recommendation of function on male. They usually increase the paternal care to the kids or to the children. So sometimes we see there are some father or male that don't really care about their kids, and there are many male or father that really care to the children. It might be affected by this OT. And then for the ADH, another name for ADH is vasopressin. Okay, and then just telling you the main function of ADH is to retain water. So retain water. Okay, so this is the main objective of the ADH, retain water within our body. Now, we know the one that release water, like for example, urine, is the kidney. So therefore, over here, kidney will be the first target for the ADH. Okay? So when we produce ADH, then we will control our urination. So it control the urine production. So normal production of urine is around 1.8 into 2 liters per day. So we have normal ADH, then our urination will be around this normal urination. Okay, 1.8 to 2 liters is about half gallon per day. And then the one that also produce water is sweat gland, right? When we are sweating, and our sweat will be, our water will be out from our body. So therefore, the sweat gland will be the second target for the ADH. So when we produce the ADH, then we will control our sweat production. And then the last one will be the one that carry water in our body, which is the blood vessel. Okay? So the blood vessels will be the next target for the ADH. Okay? It will retain water in the blood. So it's really a logical connection and explanation for these hormones. Okay, we go to the next gland, which is the thyroid gland. Thyroid gland produce two hormones, which is thyroid hormones and calcitonin. Now, thyroid hormones, these hormones increase metabolic rate, cell metabolism. Therefore, the target for this thyroid hormone will be all cell in our body. So all cell in our body will have receptor for the thyroid hormone. Now, what happens if we produce too much thyroid hormone? If it is too much, then there will be a disorder called the hyperthyroidism. So the individual usually skinny with the eyes protruded like fish eyes. They are also sensitive to hot. And another disorder is called the Graves' disease. This is hypersecretion of thyroid hormone. What happens if the production is too little, hyposecretion? If it is children, and especially this hyposecretion is happening to the mother. So if the mother during pregnancy produce very little thyroid hormones, it will cause the baby to have what we call the cretinism. So the baby will born with a smaller body, and it will be a short body too. So it is dwarfism also. Okay, so this is dwarfism to the baby that has mother that produce hyposecretions of the thyroid hormone. If this is an adult, it will cause what we call the hypothyroidism, myxedema, Hashimoto disease. All of these hyposecretion type of disorder will have similar sign and symptom, like for example, they are sensitive to cold. The next hormone produced by the thyroid gland is called the calcitonin. The function of the calcitonin is to increase. Okay, so this actually, I'm sorry. So the main function is to decrease calcium in the blood. Okay, how this calcitonin decrease calcium in the blood? By going to the target, which is the bone. Okay, remember, bone is used for storage of calcium. If we have too much calcium in the blood, then it will be taken into the bone to be stored. Okay? So this is a storage for calcium. Okay, so this is how the calcitonin decrease the calcium in the blood by taking it out from the blood and then store it in the bone. Now, the next glands will be parathyroid glands. It's only produce one hormone. It's called the Pth Parathyroid Hormone. The action of this Pth is actually opposite, okay, of the actions of calcitonin. So this is antagonistic hormone that has opposing action. Now the Pth will increase calcium in the blood. That's the main function. Okay, so increase calcium in the blood. Now the question is how our body able to increase calcium in the blood? How the Pth increase the calcium in the blood. It will go to the target. The first target will be the storage of calcium, which is the bone. Okay, so when the PTH go to the bones, then the bones will release calcium into the blood. It will increase calcium in the blood. Okay? It's very straightforward. It's very logical. And then the next target will be the organ that filters the blood, which is the kidney. Okay, so the first action will be the PTH will tell the kidney to retain calcium in the blood. It will not excrete the calcium from the blood. That's going to be the first action. The second action of PTH on the kidney will be stimulate the production of vitamin D. Vitamin D is actually produced by the kidney. And then when the vitamin D is produced, then it will be delivered into the intestine. In the intestine, the vitamin D will increase the reabsorption of calcium from diet into the blood. Okay? So at the end, all of this action, okay, in the bone, in the kidney, in the intestine, will increase calcium in the blood. Okay, so again, this is very logical explanations for this function of the hormone PTH. Now, what happens if someone produces too much PTH, hypersecretion? Okay, so of course, the first thing that we think is about what happened with the bone. And if it is too much PTH, and the bone will release so many calciums into the blood, and the bone become fragile, become weaker. So this is what we call the hyperparathyroidism or osteotis fibrosa, which is the bones become soft and fragile because there are so many calcium taken from this bone. Again, it's very logic. And then what happens if we produce too little of PTH, hyposecretion? Then the condition is called the hypoparathyroidism. And then usually the effect is in the muscle. The muscle become tetany, is contracting uncontrollably because we have too little calcium in the blood. And remember, calcium is also needed for muscle contraction. Okay, we go to the next gland, is the adrenal glands. And remember, it is divided into cortex on the outside part. And the cortex produces 3 hormones: aldosterone, cortisol, and the androgen. Now, aldosterone, the main function is to retain electrolyte like sodium, chloride, and also to excrete the potassium and hydrogen ion. So it's retain or control electrolyte. Now, maybe we think, where is the organ that controlling this electrolytes? Of course, the one that filter the blood, the kidney. Right? So therefore, the target for aldosterone will be kidney. It will tell the kidney to retain sodium and chloride and to excrete potassium and hydrogen ions. Again, very simple and straightforward action and the target. The next one is cortisol. Another name for cortisol is called the stress hormone. And the stress hormone is used to increase glycogen breakdown to provide more glucose during certain conditions. Like, for example, during stress, we need a lot of glucose. And then what is the target going to be? Of course, the target will be the one that have glycogen. Okay, there are 3 organs that mostly have glycogen: liver, muscle, and some fat tissue. So this is gonna be the target for cortisol to break down glycogen into many glucoses. Now, what happens if there are too much production of cortisol? It's called the hypersecretion. The disorder is called the Cushing syndrome for hypersecretion. For the hyposecretions, too few lower production, the condition is called the Addison disease. So usually people that have Addison disease is easy to get bruise on their body. Right? They have little production of cortisol. Now androgens. The androgen is actually male sexual hormone. It's very similar with testosterone. Okay. Therefore, this androgen for male is not really that important because male produce more stronger sexual hormone, testosterone. So there will be no significant effects on male. However, for females, this androgen is kind of important for female. First, it can stimulate libido, which is sexual drive, and stimulate hair growth. So male or female that produce more androgen usually will have more hair growth in certain area. And when the female has the when they stop production of estrogens, menopause, these androgens then still can be used to convert into estrogen. There are some androgen will be converted into estrogens where when the female get their menopause. So at least kind of give some estrogens productions over there during the or after the menopause. Okay, that's the adrenal cortex. Now the adrenal medulla, it produces two hormones, epinephrine and norepinephrine. And if we remember about the nervous system, there are autonomic nervous system that consists of sympathetic and parasympathetic. The sympathetic nervous system produces the same chemicals, epinephrine and norepinephrine. The older name for this epinephrine is called the adrenaline. Right? And we talk about adrenaline now, you can have the idea what kind of actions these adrenalines will give. So usually if you get angry, for example, then your adrenaline will be increased. So what happened then? Yeah. So what happens in your cardiac muscle, for example, it will increase the heartbeat. And the smooth muscle will dilate the blood vessel. So the blood will be flowing faster, your heart beating faster, the respiration is also faster. So this is the action, okay? So action of this adrenaline or epinephrine and norepinephrine, which is sympathetic responses. Increase heartbeat, increase respirations, dilate the pupil, increase the blood flowing. The next one is pancreas. Okay, so pancreas, remember pancreas is a mixed organ. This is endocrine and exocrine at the same time. The endocrine part is called the area, the middle area called the islets, right? The islets of pancreas. And this islet produce 4 hormones, glucagon, insulin, somatostatin, and pancreatic polypeptide. So they actually have 4 different types of cells in the islet. The alpha cell, beta cell, delta cell, okay, and the F cell. Okay, there are 4 types of cells in the islet of the pancreas. The alpha cell, this is the one that produces glucagon. Beta cell produce insulin. Delta cell produce the somatostatin. And the F cell produce the pancreatic polypeptide. Now, what is the target? Okay, glucagon. What is the function? This one is actually increase the glucose. So increase glucose or sugar in the blood. Okay, so when it is increasing glucose in the blood, it means that it's coming from the storage of glucose, which is glycogen. So this glycogen is actually storage for glucose. Now, we have to know where the glycogen is actually mostly stored. It's going to be in the liver and muscle. So liver and muscle will be the target cell for the glucagon. Now insulin. Insulin has opposite effects compared to the glucagon. So these are antagonistic hormones. It will decrease. Okay, it's decreased glucose in the blood. How? By converting the glucoses into the storage, into the glycogen. Where this process happening? Of course, in the liver and muscle, because liver and muscles are the storage for the glycogens. So the insulin targets will be liver and muscle, the same like glucagon. Now, but somatostatin, this hormone is actually stimulates the alpha cell and the beta cell. So this is a paracrine hormone. Okay, paracrine hormones mean hormones that affecting their neighboring cell, the nearby cell. That's paracrine hormones mean. So it's affecting alpha and beta cell. The F cell produces pancreatic polypeptide, and this is also another paracrine hormone because this hormone is actually affecting the delta cell. So the delta cell is the target for the pancreatic polypeptide. So this is called the paracrine hormone. Okay, just for information, if the hormone is produced by the gland and then go circulate into the blood, the hormone is called the endocrine. Okay, so it's called the endocrine. That's the first type of hormone based on the target cell. So the endocrine hormone, the target will be far distance. Okay, so far distance, and the hormone will go to the bloodstream. Okay, the second type of hormone based on the target is called the paracrine. Okay, so the paracrines mean the target is actually nearby cell. Okay, or neighboring cell. So this hormone will not go to the bloodstream. And the last one is called the autocrine. Okay, so autocrine. So this autocrine, the target is actually itself. So the gland produces the hormone, it is used by itself. Okay, so if we make a diagram, this is cell that produces the hormone. If it is endocrine, it will go to the blood circulation and then finally go to the target cell over here. Okay. If it is paracrine, this is the one that produces the hormone. This is neighboring cell. Then the hormone produced and the target will be here. Okay. Now, if it is autocrine, I say this is cell that produces the hormone, and that cell will have receptor for the hormone. So it's produce the hormone and use it by itself. Okay, so these are the three types of hormone based on the target cell: endocrine, paracrine, and autocrine. Now we go to the next gland, the ovary. This is sexual gland. It produces 4 hormones actually. The first one is called the estrogen. The second one is progesterone. So maybe we are familiar with estrogen and progesterone. There are another 2 hormones produced by the ovary. It's called relaxin and inhibin. Now, estrogens and progesterone, they work together to control the female secondary characteristic. Okay, so the targets will be the female sexual organs. Okay, and then the action will be controlling this sexual or female sexual characteristic. Relaxin usually produced when the female pregnant. The target will be the skeletal muscles along the pubic symphysis, uterine walls, abdomen. It's relaxed the muscle over there. So remember when the female pregnant and they carry the baby, then they need some muscle to be relaxed. And this relaxation is provided by the relaxin. Inhibins, and the name is telling you, this is actually the one that will inhibit the hypothalamus and also the anterior pituitary gland. So inhibit productions of FSH, and at the end it will inhibit production of estrogen and also eggs from female. Now for the male, okay, the sexual organ is called the testicle, the sexual gland, and this testicle produces 2 hormones actually. Maybe we are familiar with testosterone, but there's a second hormone, it's called the inhibin. So testosterone, this is the male sexual hormone. It's gonna be the target will be male sexual organ, and the action will be controlling this male secondary characteristic. The inhibin is very similar with the inhibin of the female side, which is the target will be the anterior glands to inhibit FSH production. Because if there are so many sperm produced or testosterone produced, it's not good. So it will be inhibited by this inhibin, by inhibiting the FSH production. The next one is pineal gland. Okay, so pineal gland is small gland that's located on the lower part of the brains on the back. And this pineal gland produces 1 hormone, it's called melatonin. So melatonin is the hormone that actually stimulates our sleepiness. Now, what is the target for this one? It's going to be the area that control our brain for wakefulness and sleepiness, which is the area on the lower part of the brain, on the brain stem, is called the RAS, reticular activating system. So this is going to be the target for the melatonin. And the next one is Thymus Gland. This gland is located above our heart, and this gland actually produces 4 hormones: thymosin, thymic humoral factor, THF, TF, thymic factor, and thymopoietin. All the target cell will be the thymus gland itself. It is kind of autocrine, the hormones that act upon their own glands. And all of this hormone is used for immune system, which is to activate the T cell maturation. T cell maturation. And just for information, when we get older, the thymus gland is actually become smaller. Okay, so that's the reason why older people, they usually lost some of their immune system due to this problem. The thymus gland becomes smaller, and then the T cell maturation also become slower or maybe less T cell maturation. That's the reason why older people, again, they have lower immune system because of this. They're going to be easily to get infection, especially by the viruses. Flu viruses, COVID-19 is going to be big problem for older people. And also just remember, there are some other organs that also has a function as endocrine gland and exocrine gland at the same time. Like, for example, kidney. Kidney produce hormones called the EPO, erythropoietin, which is the hormone that used for increased red blood cell production. Okay, so what is the target cell going to be? Of course, the one that produces red blood cell. So it's going to be the red bone marrow, right? Red bone marrow produce red blood cell. So the EPO target cell will be the red bone marrow to increase red blood cell production. Another organ like stomach, they also produce hormones, like stomach produce gastrin that will increase the hydrochloric or acid production in the stomach. Intestine also produce several hormones like CCK. Okay, the heart also produce hormones. Liver also produce hormones. So these organs also part of the endocrine system. I think that's all for the summary. I hope it helped. Again, it's very logical connections. The action makes sense. The target cell also makes sense for each hormone. We're going to have the last part of this endocrine system, which is the part number 5 after this. Thank you and goodbye.